Hello, hello, healing journey friends. It feels like a long time since I've made a video, but it hasn't been that long. It's been like a week and a half, but that's longer than usually. I wait in between, but um, it's because I've been in this state. I've been stuck in this triggered state, and I still make videos when I'm in these triggered states. My mind is a little foggier. Uh, the neurons are not firing as quickly, and I'm in sort of a more pensive state. So the last two videos that I made, I think it was two, it was after I came back from this healing trip that I went to in Arizona, and it was this amazing trip, and I learned so much about myself and my healing, and oh, it was just so wonderful. I met these beautiful, amazing, intuitive people, intuitive healers, and it was amazing. And I gained so much, and it was sort of accelerated healing. And when I came back, I think my body was in a bit of a shock, because it was like it was a lot. I finally I described this in another video, but I finally found the root. I discovered the root of my trauma, and it was a wound with my relationship with my father from a very young age. A bunch of intuitive healers, but then this one on the last day really helped me put my finger on exactly what it was. That I've lived in fear my whole life because I believe relationships are not safe. And why is that? This is not a conscious belief. This is completely unconscious beliefs. My conscious mind says, of course I'm safe in relationships. I don't understand. Where is this coming from? But my unconscious belief I've discovered over many months of digging deep into this. Now, whether or not that was accurate or not, that was my perception as a kid. And so it doesn't matter. And so it became trauma. We do this as children. We perceive the world and we make the best conclusions that we can. So I wanted to be perfect. I wanted to be pleasing. I wanted to be loving and giving and all the things, sweet and quiet and just the perfect little child. I always wanted to do that. The problem is at some age something happened that I won't go into it. It was a very subtle moment, but something happened and I realized I had to go numb because it was too much. And I went numb. I went numb to it, but that fear translated into every relationship for the rest of my life. The way I enter the world, always in fear. Always. Always in fear. And I didn't feel the fear. And it's because our bodies adjust. They adapt. They get used to the feeling of fear. When you live in fear your whole life, unconsciously, at a cellular level, it doesn't feel like fear anymore. That's just the way you feel. That's how life feels. And it's not just fear. Then a lot of times we get stuck in these emotions of shame and guilt and helplessness. And there are these emotional states that we live in. Tony Robbins calls it an emotional home. But I'm putting it in a different context here that's like it comes from your wounds and the way you learned as a child to be in the world. And what way of being is going to bring you the most love and acceptance and, success in your life. And for me, and I wonder about you, and because if you have chronic fatigue or adrenal fatigue, I have to wonder how common are these core emotions the ones you're living in without realizing. And even when I say you might not feel that that's true, that that's accurate, because it's just, you're so used to it. It's just the way you feel. And that's how I've always been. I didn't know I was living in fear. I didn't know I was living in shame. I didn't know I was living in all the emotions that I just listed are the ones that work for me, but I don't know what they are for you. But I believe that they are similar to these because I personally believe that there's a formula. There's a formula, especially for empaths. Well, being an empath is part of the formula. Not everybody with chronic fatigue and adrenal fatigue are empaths. But I believe there are certain formulas that create a body that creates adrenal fatigue or chronic fatigue. Adrenal fatigue very directly relates to fear. That's always part of the formula. My goal, I'm trying to figure out what the formulas are. And for somebody who's an empath, who the chronic fatigue and adrenal fatigue is probably emotion at its core, because empaths are so receptive and tend to internalize the external environment and the emotions of others and the emotions that you learn. It's just the emotions go deeper for empaths. So we learn to live in these emotional homes. We build our emotional home a lot of times when we're kids, when we're growing up. From our parents, from the way our parents relate to us, the way we learn to live in the world, to be safe, as I said, safe and successful and loved and accepted in the world. Human beings need those things. They need to be successful, so interpersonally, socially, because we are social creatures. That's the way we were wired. So we all learn these emotional homes when we're children, and we maintain that and make it sort of stronger usually over the years, unless something happens and it requires that you shift it. For me, that thing was chronic fatigue and adrenal fatigue, and that might be for you. Chronic fatigue and adrenal fatigue, I view now as it's this miserable experience. It's this trapped, miserable experience that is also this unbelievable opportunity for change, opportunity for a kind of healing that you never would have embarked on without this illness. That's what it was for me, and I believe it can be for you. I believe it's sort of a calling. It's your soul telling you that this isn't working. You have to go another way. It's time to heal this stuff so you can learn to live another way. There's more there for you. There's a greater life. There's a happier life. There's a freer life for you. And putting you in this illness is telling you you can't go any farther that way. You can't. Your body, we will not let you. You must stop. And until you go inside, dig deep, heal, and let go of these things that are caging you, that are holding you, that are making you go the wrong direction in your life. It's time that your soul is giving you this amazing, beautiful opportunity to discover your true self. Because what happens when you start healing core wounds, core trauma, you can't help but discover yourself, because these things that were blinding you to your true self start to come away. It's a beautiful process. I mean, it's painful and it's beautiful. It's beautiful once you start making some progress. I will say it does not feel beautiful in the beginning. So don't take what I say to think that I'm saying it's going to feel beautiful, because it's not going to feel beautiful. Childbirth does not feel beautiful until the child is birthed. We all know that it is this beautiful, amazing, incredible thing that the human woman can do. But everybody also knows it doesn't feel beautiful when you're in the middle of it. When you're in labor and now you're actually giving birth, it does not feel beautiful. It's kind of like this process. When you're doing it, when you first start, it freaking hurts and it's scary, and it's so scary. And you've never looked at these things before. You've never felt these feelings before because you've been trying so hard to run in the other direction. And what you actually have to do in this process is turn to face the thing that you've been scared of the most. It's running away from it isn't working anymore. And you have no choice but to turn, face it, look it dead in the eyes, and really feel it. But feel it in a safe way, a way that you know that you're safe because you are loved within yourself. And then you can heal it with that love and the reassurance, doing these, doing affirmations using havening techniques and EFT tapping, these mind body exercises are so helpful for healing trauma. You have to do it a lot because trauma is deep. But giving yourself affirmations with these things and then also saying out aloud the emotion that you're feeling and releasing it. But I was talking about these emotional homes that we live in. Because, all right, what I've realized, so last week I made a video talking about how I feel trapped. Since getting back from Arizona, where I feel like I had all this growth and I learned so much and all this healing, and I feel I just said last week it had been 2 weeks since I got back. Now it's 3 weeks, and it's like there's this new kind of discomfort that I feel like I'm being held in this cage. That is how I was describing it last week. And what I thought the bars of the cage, I felt like were fear. It was fear keeping me in this cage, and I didn't know how to break loose. I felt like the cage was staying the same size, and I kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. But the cage was staying the same size, so it's like, well, what? Of course, I don't fit, but I can't get out. I don't know what to. I just I felt like I didn't know what to do. So, and then I think I said at the end, like, if I figure this out, you're going to be the first to know. Well, I have not told anybody about this realization, but I think I figured out what it is. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. At least this is a part of it. This is as much as I have figured out so far. Okay. It has to do with this emotional home. So, in my mind, the first big step to healing chronic fatigue and adrenal fatigue is to calm the body. You must calm the body, the nervous system completely. And I did it using breath, mindset changes, cognitive behavioral changes, dismantling limiting beliefs on the mental side. The physical side is the breathing. It was drinking a lot of really good water from a really good filter, and also eating very, very cleanly, just meat and vegetables 3 times a day, never missing a meal, avoiding fruit, anything with sugar whatsoever, eating like a very blood sugar stabilizing diet. The point is to calm your body. You have to calm your body, and you do anything that you have to, everything. You must remove all stress, external stress from your life, because emotional wounds and toxic emotions are not going to come up when you're in fight or flight. And it gets to the point, fight or flight is another thing. It's just like living in fear, that it's kind of the same thing, but you become stuck in a sympathetic state. So much so that you don't realize that you are. It's just how you know how to be. It's like, this is the only way I know how to feel. I don't feel stimulated. This just feels normal. I don't feel like I'm in a sympathetic state, it just feels normal, but it's just that you've adapted to it. You've just become accustomed to that feeling. So that takes time to really calm the nervous system enough to be able to stay in a parasympathetic state all the time. Or, I mean, like 90% of the time. And to minimize every time you get activated, to be able to learn how to calm your body, and for your body to learn that you can calm it down. Because if the sympathetic nervous system is too stimulated for too long, it gets in this panicky state. And I know there are a lot of people with adrenal fatigue with heart palpitations and panic attacks, because as it gets worse, your body starts to learn that I can't handle this. If I get activated, stimulated, it goes more into panic because it doesn't think, but it doesn't, it's not used to, it's not trained, it's not practiced at getting it back down to the parasympathetic, activating the parasympathetic state. So you have to do that with breathing all through the day. Calm thoughts. And this thought that I always used to tell myself over and over and over again is, nothing is more important than my health. And nothing is more important than your health. And so there is a period when you must keep yourself calm, and it doesn't matter what is going on in the external. Of course, when you're first starting, you're going to have all kinds of so much frustrating moments. You're just like, that you get activated so easily. A single thought can activate your nervous system. But over time, your body will get better and better and better, and you will get better and better and better at using your mind and your breathing together to calm your nervous system. And you'll learn that you can do it. You can do it no matter what. And eventually, it took me about 18 months to reset my nervous system completely so that I didn't have to worry about getting in an activated state unless I drank coffee. Dangerous game, coffee. For adrenal fatigue recovery. Very dangerous game. Okay, number one to all chronic fatigue healing and adrenal fatigue healing. Step number one, calm your body. It has to be step number one, because emotions are not going to come up when it's not safe. And it's not safe when your body is activated. When your nervous system thinks that you're in constant threat, it's not safe. And you're never going to be able to access those emotions. You're never going to be able to access trauma. So that's step number one. All you have to do, and just focus on nothing else matters than keeping my body calm. That's all I have to do for months and months and months. It's actually sort of relieving, because your to-do list has to go away. Your everything except the minimum things. Of course, taking care of children, taking care of whoever you need to take care of, but taking care of yourself. That is just number one, and it has to be. So depending on your external circumstances and how far along in adrenal fatigue severity you are, then the time that it takes to reset your nervous system is going to vary. And how much emotional support you have. Maybe this channel can be emotional support for you. That's what I want. Step number two is healing the trauma. So you calm the body, then you're ready. You're ready to dive into this stuff. And healing trauma requires learning self-compassion, embrace all kinds of practices of self-love, self-compassion, learning these techniques that I mentioned a minute ago of havening techniques or EFT tapping, or I'm sure there are other approaches, mind-body approaches as well. Those are the ones that worked for me. Havening techniques is the one that I always used, that I had the most success with, that I found most comforting and most calming to my nervous system when I was in some sort of triggered trauma state. Like if I've started on a shame spiral or something. So step number two, and that is what I've been on for the last year and a half. No, the first step took me a year and a half. The second step has taken me a year. Healing the trauma. And I have more emotional toxicity to heal. I know that I do. But suddenly what I've realized as I'm coming out of this fog, this triggered fog that I've been in the last 3 weeks, that I could hardly think about anything. It just was, my health has been terrible. I've been really struggling. And finally in the last couple days, I'm coming out of the fog and I'm just like, you can probably tell by my energy, I'm just like so excited. I'm so excited to be out of the fog. Because whenever you're in a fog or a triggered state, there's always this feeling of, have I gotten worse? Will I get out of this? How long will this last? Has something happened? You know, like our minds tend to take us to this sort of catastrophic place. And so part of this is learning how to recognize that and not believe it when it says it to you. So as I come out of this fog, I'm realizing this major piece. I've discovered the root of my trauma, where it came from. And I finally, in the last few weeks, I think I actually have started the process of letting go the hope that I've always held on to, that I could have that my relationship with my dad that I want, that he could give me the love that I need. I've held on to that hope my whole life without knowing it. Consciously, I gave up hope more and more as the years passed, but unconsciously, I never gave up. And it's time. I've realized in the last few weeks, since that day in Arizona, this is what I need to let go of. This is the thing. This is the thing I have to let go of. So there's this way that is finishing. There's this other way in which I realize that's only the beginning. That's the root, but there are all these waves. That relationship, the trauma from that relationship has caused all kinds of wounds with all the relationships in my life. And that is true with pretty much everybody, like, you know, relationships with men, friendship. I mean, I honestly, there are so many ripple effects that it's going to take time to peel away all the things that I need to heal in that. But there's this way that this chapter is sort of getting some resolution, and yet I still have I'm still stuck in the way that I always have been. And I keep thinking, well, what? This is the cage I'm talking about. It's like, then why am I still like this? Why can I still not feel joy? Why can I still not feel happiness and just, why do I still get stuck in these states? Yeah, part of the state is triggered state coming from trauma, but that state, I mean, what are the emotions of that state? And then they sort of, I just get stuck in them for such extended periods of time. What are these emotions? I listened to some of Joe Dispenza this week, and that's when it hit me. And it's crazy because I've listened to him a bunch over the last 2.5 years. And he's been tremendously helpful, but for some reason, it just didn't hit the way it did this week. All of a sudden, I heard when he said something that I've heard him say a bunch of times, describe this way of becoming somebody else. I realized, this is where I'm stuck. I started to say this in the beginning, I live in a state all the time. Even when I'm not in a triggered state, my emotional home, and I never realized this because this is just what I'm used to. I'm in a pool of shame, helplessness, fear. It's just like this, it's a soup, it's all mixed together, and those are the emotions that I'm most familiar with, the way I respond to the world, the way I am, even if I'm not being directly triggered to make it sort of explode into this big thing that's overcoming and destroys my health and takes me back into chronic fatigue immediately. It's crazy. It's so fast. It's a direct correlation. When I'm in a triggered state, I have chronic fatigue. And every body system tells me I do. My digestion goes bad, my muscles are weak, everything hurts. It happens every time. And I think as you go through this process, you're going to find this. That as you heal stuff, you start having more and more days when you don't have these symptoms, and then it'll come back. And it's very confusing if you don't know what's going on, and this is why I'm so glad that I'm making this channel for you guys right now, because I finally have perspective of what's going on, and I didn't for so long because it's so confusing. At least I found it so. And if you don't see what's going on, it's very, very, very demoralizing. But if you do, which is why I'm making this channel, because I want you to know, be able to see better than I did what's going on in each moment of a triggered state, so that you can not lose hope as much as I did and get demoralized by your progress as much as I did. Because the truth is, when you start healing this stuff, you actually progress and heal pretty quickly, like really quickly. Remarkably so. I've said this before, but when I was healing the external stuff with food and supplements, and I barely moved in a year and a half. Barely moved. All that stuff I don't think did almost anything. It was the breathing that stabilized me, but I wasn't getting better. When I started healing trauma, that same month, I started getting better. It shocks me every time I say it, even to myself, even though I lived through it. It's just the difference in the speed, because I got to the root cause. And this could be yours, your root cause, which means this could happen to you when you start healing this stuff. But this third step, I think, is next. The next one that I need to is yes, still be healing emotional stuff, of course. But also, it's this learning. It's this. I think the next big step is this process of learning how to make a new emotional home. When Tony Robbins talks about making a new emotional home, I don't know why. It just sounds so easy. But it's not. And even when Joe Dispenza talks about it, it sounds so easy. But the new emotional home that I need to figure out how to feel comes from the heart. I want to live my life from my heart. What I mean by that is having sensation there. Of course I feel love, of course I feel warmth and nurturing and pain and hurt, but I feel those feelings other places than my heart. And love and even pain, you're supposed to have feeling there. And I don't. I live my life I live every day, every moment of my life that I can really, that's just how I've lived, with a numb heart. And I wonder, is that true for you? I'm really curious. I would really love to know. I would really love to know in the comments below. Have you lived your life with a heart that's numb, but without even thinking about it, just thinking that that's normal? That's what I've always thought. But the first time I realized that I don't have sensation in my heart was when my baby kitty, a couple years ago, died. And it was very sudden and it was very unexpected. I felt an ache actually in my heart that I've never felt before. I've felt pain of loss but never in my heart. It was eye-opening to me because it's the first time I realized I've never felt anything there. And I hate that. I want to live my life having all kinds of feeling in my heart. I want to live from my heart. Because I'm a natural sort of like nurturing type of person. And through this illness, I have started to feel like I can't give. I feel like I have nothing to give. I've said this so much recently, in the last year. It's just, I just feel like all my giving has to be to myself, and I just don't have anything to give. And I'm starting to think that maybe it's because my heart chakra is so shut off. And the emotions that I want to live from come from your heart chakra. Isn't that true for everybody? That we all want to live from joy? I would love to know how many of you feel joy on a regular basis. I honestly don't know how you could in this illness. It's like, but maybe that's the problem. Maybe this illness also happens to people who have their heart chakra shut off, that they can't feel joy. I've heard so many people say they can't feel joy. They feel like their body is not capable of doing it. And that's how I have felt. It's like, well, why can't I just feel joy? It's because my heart chakra is closed. So this is what I think I'm figuring out, that the actual bars of the cage that I've described are actually the emotional home that we live in. The emotional home of shame and fear are naturally constricting emotions. They're lower vibration. They are constricting. Your biofield is much smaller in those states than when you are in love and your heart chakra is open. Your biofield is much bigger. So this is what I'm playing with right now, and I think I'm onto something. I'm hopeful. So I don't know how I'm going to change my emotional home, but I'm going to start doing a lot of like heart breathing exercises and just working on trying to open my heart. So I don't know. We'll see. But I'd be so interested to know what you guys think of this idea. And that's all I have today. So I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.